Let's say a very good morning to Isabel Oakeshott. Isabel, nice to see you. Very good morning to you.
Good morning. It's a very interesting picture this morning, isn't it? After all that hype of, potentially up to 100 different locations of anti-immigration riots last night. And then these images that we're seeing in today's media of people holding up refugees welcome and, asylum seekers all come all, come one, come all, from crowds of people. I think we can all agree that it's a good thing that there weren't violent clashes last night, or that there don't appear to have been many. I think that a lot of people this morning will also be feeling quite mistrustful of the way this is reported. I personally have lost some faith in BBC coverage of these events because it has been blatantly biased right from the outset, in giving a totally disproportionate reporting bandwidth to one side of the argument and much less to the other. So I think people will be wondering what really happened last night, and the truth is that a lot of people did come out peacefully, and one way or another, there were not the violent scenes that many feared. Does that mean that this issue has somehow magically gone away? In my opinion, no. And you referred to the piece by Dan Hodges in today's Mail. I think he makes exactly the same mistake that the Labour government has made right from the start of this, which is trying once again to blame it all on far-right extremists. I mean, certainly they've played an ugly part. Certainly they have orchestrated some of this unrest and considerable amount of this unrest. What they haven't done is orchestrated the profound feelings of anger and betrayal amongst people up and down this country at what has happened to our nation and the loss of control of our borders.
Yeah, absolutely right. And also loss of control of the streets, because, I mean, as much as Keir Starmer complains about how he wants to take back the streets and he wants to make it safe for everybody in Britain, well, one of the reasons people are angry and frustrated is because the streets are not safe in Britain. You know it better than anybody. You were up in Leeds recently where you discovered a whole heap of just ridiculousness, I suppose it would be the best way to describe it. People living in squalor, people living in ways that you wouldn't have thought in modern Britain that would be the case. Rotting clothes sitting in street corners, rotting rubbish, food, stuff being thrown out, furniture, like slum living from almost the Victorian era. And a lot of people who are frightened to go out at night in their neighbourhoods because they're worried about meeting up marauding gangs of criminals who are going to steal things from them, with the shoplifting that's been going on. Our streets have not been safe for a while. And the knife crime epidemic has caused people to be very, very concerned about that.
That's absolutely right. And I think the images of so-called anti-fascist demonstrations last night are actually only going to rile up in a peaceful fashion many of those who feel their voices on these issues just aren't heard. We probably didn't really need a load of placards saying, refugees welcome, migrants welcome. Note how many Palestinian flags we see there. I see some pride flags in some of these protests as well. Peace and love, all very well. We all want peace and love. But refugees welcome is a different thing. Genuine refugees, yes. But if you just brandish around signs saying, let's boot out racists, let's get rid of all of those who question unfettered immigration, you're failing to tackle the fundamental problem, which is the mass importation of low-skilled or unskilled labour, or even people who are simply surviving on the benefits system. There's no point in pretending that isn't a thing. If you fail to actually acknowledge those very real issues, then this just festers, just like it does in France. And every now and again, it blows up in the most horrible fashion.
Right.
So I want to be really clear that it's fantastic and positive that there weren't horrible scenes last night. But I do worry that now we're an England of two sides, and that on the one side, we've got people waving placards saying refugees welcome and Palestinian flags and pride flags. And on the other hand, you've you've got, frankly, probably millions of ordinary people who feel that they don't have a voice, that they're disempowered, and that they're labelled racist and far right for having real concerns about what's happening to their communities. And that is not a healthy place to be.
It really isn't. And we've been talking about that for the best part of the last week and a half. And we're going to come to the woman that you interviewed in Leeds, who was arrested as part of what we're calling two-tier policing. But let's have a look just from Walthamstow last night at what they were chanting, these people who were supposedly anti-racist demonstrators. I mean, I'm sorry, that doesn't look any different to me than the Free Palestine marches that have been going on every Sunday or Saturday since October the 7th in some way, shape or form in many cities around the country. So, I mean, it looks like a mobilisation of what I would call the far left, because a lot of the other signs that they were holding up were in the same typeface and in the same design as all the socialist worker signs that always get held up at those rallies.
Well, completely. So I didn't have any audio there, so I don't know what they were actually...
They were actually shouting free Palestine.
I mean, this is my point, that what we're seeing here is not an outbreak of peace and love across our nation, much as I'd like that to be the case, and I genuinely would. Why would we, you know, those of us that have nice lives, why would we want trouble? I don't want trouble. I don't want people to be unhappy. I don't want people to be enraged. But we're not seeing an outbreak of love, not hate, as some of those signs say. I'm sure many of those people did come in that spirit. But why are we seeing Palestinian flags? Why are we seeing a load of, you know, very strong culture wars messages there? And the truth is that an awful lot of people in our country do not want to welcome unlimited refugees because the country can't take it. And those people are not racist, and they are sick of being labelled as such. And I think for another side of the story, it's interesting to look at the polling that has been done on the riots. That came out yesterday. I think it was YouGov polling.
Yes.
And it showed actually a very significant number of people supporting quietly the protests. They weren't supporting violence, but they were certainly supporting the reasons for the protest, which is the concerns that we've been discussing. And actually quite a high proportion of those questioned who vote for certain parties, and I'm not talking the BNP here, were actually quietly quite supportive of noisy protests.
Yeah, absolutely right. And funnily enough, you don't hear much about that on the BBC. And just to go back to your point about, you know, unemployment, there's an interesting piece in The Spectator that's just dropped this morning from Douglas Murray. He's looked into the comparison of figures from 2011, when we had the last kind of proper civil unrest, I suppose, back then, and now. And at the time of the 2011 riots, he tells us, foreign-born workers accounted for 14% of the UK workforce. Today, it is 21%. And he's looked at also the towns in the north, like Rotherham and Sunderland and Hartlepool, and basically the unemployment rate and people on out-of-work benefits, the number has gone up for things like from 18 to 19%, from 16 to 18%. You know, so the problems in those places have got worse, and the number of people on out-of-work benefits has increased. And so you've still got this kind of what I would call forgotten part of British society. You know, yes, you've got the far left Palestine crowd, and you've got people who are unhappy, but you've also got the sort of the back end of it all, I suppose, is the forgotten people of Britain.
Absolutely, and that's what I was seeing in that particular part of Leeds that I went to. And there's a dimension to this that doesn't get nearly enough attention, I think. Anyone who lives in a city will notice the number of what I call boys in balaclavas on bikes. What are those boys in balaclavas on bikes doing in the middle of the summer, delivering their fast food? You know, they work for Deliveroo, they work for Uber, you can see it, it's all branded. Why are they wearing balaclavas? I'll tell you why they're wearing balaclavas: because they are working illegally. And by working illegally, they are basically depressing the wages of proper workers who are signed up to pay their tax and be in the system. They are basically pricing out people who are working legitimately. I know this, I've seen it. They end up working for a very, very low wage, but because they're not paying any tax, and quite frankly, most of them are living in taxpayer-funded accommodation, they can afford to do that. Right. So the figures that you just cited there about the employment rates are only reasonably reflective of what's going on. There's a whole
tip of the iceberg, isn't it?
Black market economy. I just ask our listeners to look at these boys in balaclavas and think to themselves, is this what we want in our country? People going around in masking their identity because they are working illegitimately. It's not what I want to see.
No, and that is one of the big growth industries in this country. I mean, we're going to say Deliveroo and Uber Eats have said that they do vet the people that they employ. But I mean, I know of a case certainly back in, I think it was last year, where a load of Deliveroo drivers were picked up by the cops, and it turned out they were all illegal immigrants. And which kind of gives the lie to the fact that people who come here can't work.
I mean, I've investigated this in considerable detail, and the companies are absolutely culpable in this case. What happens is that they do vet the genuine account holders, but they are, as the companies are entirely aware, genuine account holders then subcontract their accounts. It's an absolute racket. And, you know, why the government, successive governments, have turned a blind eye to this, I don't know. It's like all those Turkish barber shops. I mean, how many heads have people got that need cutting all the time? We all know what's going on there. Those are money laundering rackets.
There's never anyone in them, is there?
Never anyone in them. We know you don't need, you know, in the constituency of Boston and Skegness, where my partner is MP, there is a street where there are about 6 of them. It's only a short street.
Right.
Yeah.
And, it's not as if you walk around Boston and Skegness thinking, God, the people here have got really well coiffed hair. What an amazing place. I've never seen anything like it.
Absolute nonsense. So people instinctively feel there's something going very, very wrong here. And let's not forget, hundreds of people, additional people, have come over by boat this week. We've got a government that promised to stop the boats and smash the vile gangs and all of that. As far as I know, they've yet to actually get their super duper border agency up and running. They're not going to stop the boats anytime soon. If they do, I'll be the first to come on and say well done. And at the same time, they've expressed no desire whatsoever, in fact, quite the reverse, to reduce legal migration. So people are going to go on getting angrier and more divided.
Yeah, of course they are. Which brings us on to another exclusive that you did a little bit earlier this week, and it was Leeds resident Nicola Wilcock, one of those who was arrested at a protest in Leeds. Have a look at this as she recounts how she was a victim of two-tier policing.
All these men started to pull their hoods up and come towards me. They kept saying, go home, and I thought, I can't go home because they're all going to see where I live. So I couldn't say that out loud. I just kept saying, I'm not going home. I'm going home now. I live there. They're going to watch me go into all these people. And I kept saying, why are they here? Why are they here? Why are you allowing them to be here? Why? Because, like I said, they haven't come for a picnic. So why are they here? I wouldn't say they were angry people. It was just it was when they saw me, all hoods seemed to come up. I thought, what's going to go on here? Why are these people interested in me? And the focus all went on to me then, and I started to get really uncomfortable thinking, why are they all staring at me? Why are they coming towards me? The policeman said, the man on my right, if you don't go home, we're going to have to arrest you. And you can hear me say, well, you're going to have to arrest me then. So they're starting to grab hold of my arms, and I said, you don't need to manhandle me. But I'm armed with 2 ice lollies. I'm not a threat to you.
And we saw so much of that. I mean, people arrested in London at the protest last Wednesday night simply for being the subject of a dispersal order and being in the wrong place at the wrong time. You know, an awful lot of people, about 60 of them, just arrested for standing around.
I mean, it's just awful. You know, that lovely lady, Nikki, is really traumatised by what happened to her, and I don't blame her. I mean, she went out to do good. She went out to offer the police some refreshments. found herself being the one that was arrested amongst this violent mob, very few of whom, as we know, were arrested. And I'm not going to stop going on also about the 2 thugs at Manchester Airport who beat up police officers. Right. It's not there for anybody to see on the video footage. Why haven't they been charged? I genuinely cannot see the justification for those individuals not having been charged. There are other individuals who have behaved appallingly and have already been sentenced. So,
well, this is the thing. And one of them, who's the lead man in all of the stories, a guy called Derek Drummond, a 58-year-old, who shouted at the police and then punched an officer outside of a mosque in the face, and that is his crime, has been sent to jail for several years. I mean, it makes it even more ridiculous.
Wonderful to see that our criminal justice system can get its act together when the politicians decide it's absolutely imperative. Again, I thought that was a big political mistake. Just to parade 3 white people as big. Look at these. Look what happens to you. Let's have a range. If you are as a government and as a police force facing accusations of 2-tier policing, don't then lean into that and only arrest and charge and process a certain demographic. You've got to be seen to be even-handed. I don't think they have been even-handed. And poor Nikki Wilcox has been using up taxpayers' resources, being sent on racial awareness courses. I've never met anyone less racist in my life.
Yeah, and just one other final thing. The 3 people who have been sent to prison over the riots in Liverpool were all locals. This kind of narrative that people are being bussed around the country and jumping on trains mob-handedly from all sorts of parts of the country to go and cause trouble in a place where everybody's really nice doesn't appear to be true. And I'm getting a lot of tweets this morning from people saying that, this whole business of the far-right conspiracies is the new COVID,
Oh, honestly, I've had those feelings about the COVID and lockdowns in the last few days. I felt that we've been gaslighted, on a systematic scale. A whole population of people are being told that something is the case when in your heart you kind of know it isn't. And those of us who pushed back against lockdowns turned out to be right, and I think will turn out to be right on this one, that we're not making this up. There are profound problems in our country with mass uncontrolled immigration and a huge number of vested interests who are getting fat off the proceeds of this very unsettling industry. And it is an industry, by the way, and each and every day I am receiving incredibly interesting inside information from whistleblowers, from sources about the scale of abuse of the system. And I'm not going to go away quietly. I'm not going to stop exposing this stuff because this is our country. It is our society. It's our culture and our taxpayers' money. And I think that everybody has a joint interest in it being a peaceful and productive and harmonious culture. And what we're doing in terms of what our policymakers and politicians are doing is contributing to the exact opposite of that, as we've seen recently. It
is, absolutely right. Isabel, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Isabel Oakeshott there, Talk's international editor. And make the country a place where hard work is actually rewarded, for heaven's sake.